How are you doing, Beth?
I'm good. I had
You
my first
hanging
online class today.
and
Really weird.
was it weird? Yeah,
Yeah, the
it's
professor
a
had
weird platform.
he had like a tropical background behind him. And
Yeah, we could do that too, technically, if I want. I'm not really
yeah.
that interested. Right now, the quietest place is my bedroom because the outside is really, it's pretty hot and sunny. And inside, there's a lot of children. I'm
Amen.
going to start with sharing this story, which I'm going to share probably more than once in the next few weeks. In 1828, that Tzemach Tzedek, there was a very bad plague that was really ravaging a lot of lives and killing a lot of people. And Tzemach Tzedek was asked what to do about it. And obviously, step one is to follow medical advice. And again, that's why, Lazarus are hunkered down. That's why Menachem Fishman's hunkered down. That's why Chabad is not open. For many reasons, obviously, we can understand why it is what it is. So number one, medical advice. And obviously, as Jews, preserving life is number one. But then the Tzemach Tzedek said another two very practical takeaways, two very practical things, which I think we can really, really, reflect upon. Is give tzedakah, little coins throughout the day. And so I literally put a tzedakah box in two different rooms in the house with a little pile of coins nearby. And throughout the day, just walk by and give a coin and give a coin and give a coin, because we know there's a tremendous power to tzedakah. And we have the ability to please God, transform, change within this world through giving tzedakah. This is number one. Number two was to say Tehillim, say Psalms. And I think this truly is a time in Hebrew, English, any language. Hashem obviously understands every language. And to be saying Psalms. So when you're specifically worried about your parents, your grandparents, say their chapter. Tehillim, say chapter 20. The world could use it. So we're just, without further ado, Beth, do you mind reading the overview for us? It's in the chat on the bottom. Do you see it?
Yes.
Go ahead and read for us.
This week's Torah reading, Vayikra, begins the third book of the Torah, Leviticus. Last week we completed the reading of the book Exodus, which concluded with a description of the construction of the tabernacle. This week's portion will provide a description of the various sacrifices, animal, fowl, and meal offerings offered by the priests in this newly sanctuary.
So we're starting a new book. Just last week we said Chazak v'nes Chazek, be strong, be strong, and be strengthened. And we're moving on to a new book. So what I wanted to do today is hopefully we'll have an opportunity we can learn together, is if you open up Vayikra, and I understand for hopefully next week I'll be able to send the file in advance. I don't want to make people sign up, but maybe there's a way to make it as an attachment or a link maybe there's a way to upload it on the website. But if you look at the first pasuk of this parsha, it says, Vayikra Hashem el Moshe, Vayidaber elav me'ohel moed leimar. Daber el b'nei Yisrael, va'amarta alehem, Adam ki yakriv mikem karban lashem, min habehema, min habakar, min hatzayin, takrivu es karbanchem. And Vayikra, Hashem called to Moshe, and Hashem spoke to him from the tent of the meeting. Hashem spoke to him from the Olamod, from the tent of the meeting. Speak to the children of Israel, Vaydaber, right? Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man among you brings a sacrifice to Hashem for animals, for cattle, flocks, you shall bring a sacrifice. Okay, fine, standard. Interestingly enough, and I'm going to try to show it to you on the camera. Hopefully this will work. If you look at the text of Vayikra, if you have a Chumash in front of you, which maybe for next week we'll have Chumash in front of us, we'll get a little bit more on top of our game. But if you look at the text, anyone see anything interesting about the word Vayikra?
The aleph is really small.
Yeah, Vav Yud Kof Reish, and a very, very small aleph. A very, very small aleph is there. So right away, Rashi is going to notice things that are done differently in the Torah. Okay? So Rashi asks, and he called Moshe. So first Rashi's noticing, okay, there's two aspects. There's a side, and then there's also how Hashem is calling Moshe. So every time, this is Rashi, and he called to Moshe. And if anyone has a Chumash in front of them, Tali, if you have a Chumash in front of them, feel free to read that Rashi for us. Do you have a Chumash in front of you?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, go ahead and read that Rashi for us.
The Eternal call to Moshe, all forms of the Eternal's communication with Moshe, whether they were in a form of speaking, Vaydaber, in the form of saying, Vayomer, or in the form of commanding, Tzav, were preceded by a call, Kriya. It is an expression of affection.
Okay, 1 second. Hold on. Stop. Pause. Every time Hashem was communicating with Moshe, it was either Vayidaber, Vayomer, or Vayitzav. He commanded, he spoke, different expressions. In this case, it's preceded by God calling to Moshe by a name. In this case, Kriya, meaning call. Hi, Laser. What is Kriya? So Rashi's going to explain what's the difference of this way of Hashem calling. Hi, Jackie. Welcome. We're learning the first Rashi on the word Vayikra. And we noticed in Vayikra, the word, very classic discussion, is the aleph is very, very, I don't know if you could see it, small aleph, a mini aleph. So we're discussing why, and we're reading the first Rashi on this. So Talia just read how the first Rashi is discussing the ways that Hashem usually would call Moshe. Vayidaber, Vayitzav, Vayomer. What is the deal with the word Kriya? Okay, Talia, continue reading that Rashi.
Okay.
Calling.
Yeah. Sorry, hold on.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone. Yeah, I did. Okay. It is an expression of affection which the ministering angels use to address each other. And it says, Vayikra ze el ze. Each one would call to the other and say, holy, holy, holy. I'm gonna stop there.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. No, keep going. You got it. So basically, usually the word Vayikra is used to some sort of level of endearment. Okay, like it said, Karazel Zeh, like a connection, a bond, different than Vayidaber or Vayomer. So something's different going on here with this word Vayikra, and the whole Chumash is called Vayikra, and the Parsha is called Vayikra, and the Aleph in Vayikra is a mini Aleph. So something's going on, and we know whenever we study text, when something is different or something is unique, there is a reason. It's not a mistake. There's a reason that at this point, this word is being called. Read the second Rashi. To him, a love.
Okay. To him, this is added to exclude Aaron. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Beseira, said 13 communications are mentioned in the Torah as being both to Moshe and Aaron, and correspondingly 13 limiting expressions are stated. This teaches you that these 13 communications were not actually said to Aaron, but rather to Moshe, for him to say to Aaron. These are the 13 limiting expressions, ledaber ito, and when Moshe entered the tent of meeting to speak to the Eternal. Midaber elav.
Okay. So clear. So Rashi goes on to explain that the idea between Vayidaber, meaning usually was to Moshe. Moshe would speak to Aaron, and that was usually their style, the way it went down. But so here, when it's saying lo to him, who is it talking to? Versus a love. That only Moshe was the one who heard Hashem, and the rest of Bnei Israel did not. Okay, so that's something that's just an interesting side point. So the Tzemach Tzedek, when he was a young child, so the Tzemach Tzedek, a little historical context, the Tzemach Tzedek's mother was Rebbetzin Devar Leah, and she actually gave up her life in order for Chassidus to continue going. It's a very interesting story, but she made her father promise that she would raise, that the Alter Rebbe would raise her only son, which was Menachem Mendel, the Tzemach Tzedek, who then became a predecessor in one of the Chabad Rebbes. Okay, so when the Alter Rebbe was taking the Tzemach Tzedek to Cheder, he was taking him to learn. In the beginning of his, Araim Farish, when a young boy is starting his yeshiva, his Cheder learning, it's very that the fathers in their life take them to learn, and they start with, or the mothers, the fathers, they bring the kid to Cheder, and they start with Vayikra. So the Tzemach Tzedek was a young child around 3, and he looked and he noticed that the Vayikra had a small aleph. Okay, so he asked his father, Zayda, why is there a small aleph? Okay, what's interesting, that the Raza asks the same question, is why is Vayikra written with a small aleph? And the Raza explains, even though Moshe spoke directly to God, with Hashem regularly, he still was very, very humble. That was the Razaz's answer. The Klayakar goes on and shares a little bit of a different perspective. Klayakar, another commentator, says the small aleph is an allusion to the custom that small children traditionally begin their studies with this book. As the Midrash states, why do we initiate young children with the section of sacrifices? Just as sacrifices are pure, so too our young children are pure. So the Klayakar says, okay, young children start with Vayikra, that's why it's small. And just like sacrifices in the temple and all that was very pure, young children are very, very pure. That's why they started. But the Rebbe actually goes on. So the Alter Rebbe, first of all, answers his young child. What was the Alter Rebbe's answer to the Tzemach Tzedek, to Menachem Mendel? His answer was that this is actually to show us that Moshe was anav mikol ha'adam. He was the most humble of all man. And Alter Rebbe went on and explained, in comparison to Adam, and in Divrei Hayamim, which is part of Tanakh, it discusses Adam. It says Adam with a big aleph. And here it says Vayikra, referring to Moshe with a small aleph. So the Alter Rebbe says it's to show us that Moshe Rabbeinu was very, very humble. And he saw himself with humility. Like if someone else, like basically the talents I have, Moshe saw himself as the talents I have, they came from God. They're not my talents. They're not my abilities. They're not my skills. And if someone else had the same talents or abilities or skills, they would probably do better than I would do. Okay? So the author is explaining this to this young child. And then he goes on to say that as opposed to, or in contrast to Adam, written with a big aleph, that Adam was the wisest. It says even smarter than angels, and that's why he named the animals. But that wisdom actually led him to a place where what ended up happening? What did Adam end up doing after he named the animals? What did Adam end up doing? What sin? What took him off the path? Anyone know? Guys, Adam. What did Adam do? Come on, you guys know this one.
He ate from the tree.
Yeah. So basically is his knowledge, meaning the first man, Adam, was he was Kapav Shel Hashem. He was created by God. And God even said how wise he was. And that's why God gave him the ability to name the animals, even wiser than the greatest of angels. But Adam was aware of the fact that God made him and was aware of his greatness. And therefore, he succumbed and ended up eating from the tree of knowledge. Meaning, and Moshe was, who had a very, very high neshama, very high soul, recognized his gifts came from God and realized that someone else had those gifts, they would do something different. The Rebbe goes on to say, why was that the Alter Rebbe's answer to a young child? Number one, a young child of 3 or 4 or 5 doesn't know Divrei Yamim, doesn't know the fact that Adam lifted in a different section of Tanakh as a big aleph. It's so not a basic answer to give a young child. Second of all, why is it seem that the Alter Rebbe is almost like shedding a negative light on Adam? Why would the Alter Rebbe make that point by kind of putting Adam in his place and to a young child? Like, how does that help this young boy get an answer? Right? You could understand that Kleyakar's answer was maybe more appropriate for a young child, right? Or even the Razaz's answer was appropriate for a young child. The fact that it was talking about Moses' humility, or the fact that this is the beginning where a young child reads because a young child is as precious to Hashem, right? You could understand how other ones of these may have been a better fit for an answer. So we certainly know that it wasn't the Alter Rebbe's path to disparage people, and it certainly wasn't that the Alter was trying to shed, God forbid, negative light on Adam. So what's going on here? So the Rebbe goes on to explain something so fascinating with a real practical takeaway. The Rebbe goes on to explain that Moshe knew his milot. He knew his talents. Yes, he was anav mikol ha'adam. And he actually, if we look, we talk about in Basi Lagani, the Basi Lagani, the Rebbe outlines how when God was first revealed in the world, and then from Adam, from the sin, the Shekhinah retreated a little bit more. And then as more generations came down, the Shekhinah retreated more and more and more. When was the Shekhinah, God's presence, fully in this world by Har Sinai, by the Mishkan. All those things happened with who? Moshe. So Moshe certainly had a gift of bringing the Shekhinah into the world, right? He created repaired the world in a certain way. But Moshe understood that his gifts and his talents came from God. Okay? Where is and here's where the Alter Rebbe the Rebbe points out the Alter Rebbe is really trying to teach this young child as he embarks on his journey in learning and in learning Torah, self-discovery, is as important as it is to be like Adam, it's important to be like Moshe. As important as it is to be like Moshe, it's as important to be like Adam. Meaning, Adam, it says, Makir Milas Atzma. He knew his Milas. He knew his strengths. If I ask this, I did this before Rosh Hashanah, I did this as an experiment. I ask, and I'm going to ask all of you may have heard this from me before. Think of 4 gifts that you have, talents that make you uniquely you. Okay? Think of 4 things that you need to improve on. Which list is usually easier to make? Hi, Jessica. Which list is easier to make? Anyone want to jump in and share which list they think is easier
to improve upon more than things that you didn't?
Yeah, it's easier. As a matter of fact, when you do this in public and you ask people, can you say them? People get very uncomfortable talking about the things they're good at, but the things they need to improve on, no problem. I have a long list. I have a list in a second. It's so fascinating. So what the Alter Rebbe was actually trying to teach this young child was Makir Milas Shel Adam. Know the advantages of who you are. Know what makes you uniquely you. If Adam was made from a part of Hashem, okay, Kapav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's made with God's hands, literally. He understood how precious he was. It's not any different for us. We're also precious. We're also important. We're also significant. And the world also needs us. Kapav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're no different. You're made with God's own hands. And even though Adam, yes, he erred and he made a mistake and he sinned, was he not any more important? Was he not any more a part of Hashem? No. He always still had that part of Aleph, that connection, that neshama within him of who he was, which is why he went on to continue to do what he needed to in this world. And yet, if we just think about ourselves and our talents, that's a problem. Here comes the demand. That's a paradox. And this is what the Rebbe is saying is a point that we can learn from the response the Alter Rebbe gave about the small Aleph. We have to know our strengths, but we also have to have humility and realize where they came from. There was once a Chabad rabbi who wrote the Rebbe a letter, and he wrote a long letter where he basically said, I quit. I'm not good enough for the job. I'm not good enough for a job. I'm not successful enough. I'm not accomplishing enough. And the Rebbe's response was, I sent a shliach to that town, and he writes his name. Maybe you should get to know him. He's exactly who I wanted to live in that town. So you can look at that answer and say, what was the Rebbe saying? The Rebbe was saying, get to know yourself. You have what you have. You have the skills, the talents, the abilities to navigate this. You have it. Get to know yourself. So we have to get to know that we are precious. We are part of Hashem. We are here for a reason. Just like Adam literally created with a Vayipach ba'apav nefesh chai. God gave us a living soul, a neshama, that small aleph that's indelible, no matter what the layers look like, no matter where we're holding in our life and our journey, we have a part of Hashem within us. And yet, why is it important to see that small aleph and humility in contrast when it came to Moshe? Moshe also knew his milas. It wasn't that Moshe had bad self-esteem. He didn't need therapy. But he understood where his talents and gifts came from. He knew they came from Hashem. So then the Rebbe says, let's take it one step further. To really be open to learn and grow, as important as it is to understand your own gifts and your own talents and realize where they come from and have healthy doses of humility, you also have to be able to see the same in others. Because it didn't need to bring up the story of Adam at all. The Alter Rebbe could have driven home the point that there's a small off to talk us about humility. It's important to be humble. There's a lesson to learn from both, the paradox and both realities. It's God forbid it was not to be negative. It was to point out you and I are created with a piece of Hashem that's indelible, indestructible, and indelible and indestructible. And we have to remember that we have to kind of navigate the paradox of both realities. On the one hand, there's no one in the world like you, right? Like Adam, like that first human being, with that own DNA, with that own imprint, with that own tafkid in this world, the own reason for existence. And yet, on the other hand, the gifts and the talents we have, acknowledge them and realize that we have to do good with them. And we also have to be able to see another fellow with that same chelik elokah. We have to look at someone else and see beyond the layers. I was yesterday in an interview, and it was about, there's this training course for continuing Jewish education, and I'm very fascinated by it. And in the interview, the person who asked me said, what is it that inspires you and prevents burnout? And I told him, obviously, first of all, working with young college students and seeing the beautiful journeys of their life. When Jackie sent me a picture of her challah in her beautiful home, nothing made me more happy. Seeing how young Jews, I'm serious, are celebrating Judaism in their own lives, in their own homes, in their own families is tremendous. That's one path. So on a selfish level, it's very gratifying. And I said on the second level, and this is really maybe the primary level, is understanding that every single Jew has a chelik elokah mima'al mamash, deep, infinite bond with God and with their potential. And every single one of us, there's no extras here. We're all here for a reason. And we have to remember that as important as it is to know the areas we need to improve, that's how important it is to know the areas that we need, our strengths. Ma'ila shel Adam. Okay? And understand that they're gifts from Hashem, and we actually don't have the permission to squander them. We don't have the permission to squander them. So self-doubt and negativity that's going to hold us back from maximizing our potential, we really don't have the right to do that. We have to use our gifts that Hashem gave us, obviously with humility, and appreciate where they come from. And we have to see the same in others so that we can help them shine their own unique light. Each one of you in your own reality, in your own homes, your own dynamics, your own families, your own whatever it is. And we should never forget that they're gifts, and that the little aleph is just a beautiful reminder to us of balancing humility with our God-given gifts and bringing light into the world with them. I want to end off with today's Hayom Yom, the thought for the day, because I think it's, excuse me, sorry, very awkward. Hold on. I'm just trying to get it today's Hayom Yom. Sorry. I pulled it up. I thought I even cut and pasted it, but apparently I didn't. Okay. And I think it's so appropriate that this is the Hayom Yom of today, because as I was learning this sikha about the balance of the paradox of, knowing your self-worth and knowing your talents and your abilities, and yet being humble and recognizing they come from somewhere and being able to see that in someone else, this really struck me as like, then the Menachem was reading the Hayom Yom. We had a mini minyan today. I'll send you a photo. It was really hilarious. My kids all decided they're having minyan at 9:30. So, you'll see. I'll send a picture maybe on put on Instagram the minyan. And I heard Menachem read the Hayom Yom. I'm like, wait, tell me that Hayom Yom again. So he sent me a screenshot. So the Rebbe is the one who authored the Hayom Yom. He said, truth is, my father said, truth is the middle path. An inclination to the right can be overly stringent with oneself and find faults or sins not in accord with the truth, or the inclination to the left to be overly indulgent, covering one's faults or being lenient in demands of avodah out of self-love. Both ways are false. So thinking the whole world's about me and I'm just perfect, that's a problem. But thinking I'm who am I? What am I worth? I have nothing to give the world, that's also a problem. And actually, to conclude beautifully in the Sikha from the Rebbe actually adds, that's why when it's talking about understanding awareness of self and talents and abilities and gifts was a big aleph. And when it's talking about uber humility is a small aleph. And yet, what is the Torah written in? Big font, small font, or medium font?
Medium font, if I had to guess.
Medium font,
because it's a little bit
obviously.
bigger, so it's smaller.
They're right. Meaning it's a yotze min haklal when it's big, and it's a yotze min haklal when you see small. On average, when you look at the Torah, it's written in a medium font. It's not tiny that you have to like this, but it's not huge. And that's what the Rebbe is saying, is that really a dose of balance in these two areas is how we have to navigate life. So I really, usually our lunch and learn goes on longer than an hour. We're going to keep them to about a half hour because I think on Zoom it's a little harder to learn long distance. And for next week, hopefully I'll have, I will post on Instagram maybe a screenshot of the handout of what we're doing, or I'll post it on the website, chabadathome.com. And we'll continue to learn together. Any thoughts on this interesting sikha? Any ways you could feel like this could be really, really applicable in your life? I think when we doubt our talents, we rob the world of something important, the gifts that God gave us. The world needs our gifts. The world needs our talents. The world needs our unique, who we are. We can't forget it. Any thoughts? Jessica, you just jumped on a while back. Any thoughts? You have to unmute yourself. I could unmute you. Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I didn't catch a lot of the conversation.
Okay, so let me go. I'm going to give you a very bridged version, so because people came in at different points, and then but I want to hear your thoughts, okay? Okay. So basically, the word Vayikra in this week's Torah portion is a term of endearment. How God is calling Moshe as a little bit more endearing. Usually, God says Vayomer or Vayedaber, and he called, or Vayitzav, and he commanded. Here, God's saying a term of endearment. But what's also interesting about Vayikra, there's a very small aleph at the end of Vayikra. So what's that small aleph about? Why? So we said that actually, so where there was two answers that we read about. The Razah said to teach us that Moshe was humble, so there's a small aleph. And that was endearing, okay? The other one was to say that Vayikra is the portion that a young child starts when they go to Cheder, and that Vayikra is showing us it's for the little child who's as pure as the karbanot, the offerings that it's about to talk about. So there was actually that Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitch Rebbe, when he was a young child, his grandfather raised him because his mother died. Okay, and his mother asked his father, the Alter Rebbe, please commit to her father to raising my son. He ended up becoming the third Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe raised him and invested a lot in him. So the Tzemach Tzedek, when he was going to Cheder, they started with Vayikra, and he right away asked that question, and the Alter Rebbe answered him a very unique answer. The Alter Rebbe said that Adam, who is the first man, was created by God himself. And when he was created by God himself, he was wise, smarter than any angel. And that's why he named all the animals. He saw the essence of who they are. But that awareness of self, that awareness of knowing his strengths and knowing that it was made by God, Makir Miles Shalat Atzmai, he knew his own gifts and abilities and talents, is actually kind of what led him to a place where he ended up eating from the sin of the golden calf. And we know until Moshe came around, God wasn't revealed in such a real, strong, powerful way like Sinai, like the Mishkan, okay, the tabernacle. So, and then the Alter Rebbe said, in contrast to Moshe knew that he had talents and abilities, but Moshe was very, very humble. He was called Anav Mikol Adam, the most humble of all man. Not only did he know he was humble, that Moshe had this mindset, if someone else had my talents are just God-given. I was given the talent to sing or to talk or to teach or whatever our own talents are, yeah? But if someone else had those talents, I'll probably do a much better job. So the Alter Rebbe, okay, that's the story. So the Rebbe asks a question on this story. How is it possible that was a perfect answer for a young child? And why and the Alter Rebbe even said that in Divrei Yamim, which is the end of Tanakh, it talks about Adam with a big aleph to show he had like more of a sense of self, and Moshe a small aleph to show that he had humility. So the Rebbe asks, why did this question get asked? Like why was that the best answer? Why couldn't he answer the Razah's answer, the Kleyaker's answer, seemingly a little bit more developmentally appropriate? So the Rebbe is saying that the Alter Rebbe wanted to teach his young child, Tzemach Tzedek, very important lesson in life. Who should we be like? We should have a strong sense of self and be like Adam, who knows their talents and gifts and abilities. Hold on. No, Jax, we're happy for you to be on. Stay on. Jax, speak up, okay? We all want to hear from you. You're going next before Jessica. Hold on. Someone is unmuted. Yassi, label. Hold on. It's my kids in the other room and they're on the call. You hear it? You hear it? This is Zoom. You saw those Zoom videos? They're hilarious. Hold on. I'm going to go tell Yassi to have label. Oh, they shut it. They must have heard. Okay. Oh, no, they didn't. Hold on. Let me see if I can mute them. I should be able to mute. No, because it's my own login. Label logged on to Chabad and he's not muted and he's making a lot of background noise. So whoever logged on Chabad, okay, now it's quiet actually. So which one's the better way? Must you pop in and say hi? Which way is the better way to do it? What's the better medium or the better avenue, the better mindset? Humility, or the big Aleph, knowing my strengths and knowing I come from Hashem and knowing that I have an neshama, and or Moshe so humble that like I know my gifts only come from Hashem. If someone else had them, I wouldn't be as successful. So the Alter Rebbe was basically teaching his grandson that you need both, and that's why the Torah is written in the middle font, the book for the in-betweener, meaning not too much self, like, oh my gosh, I'm so amazing, and without me, yes, we're all created by God, with intentionality, with purpose. We have talents and gifts and abilities, but those talents and gifts and abilities came from God, and if they came from God, we don't have the right to squelch or to not express them or not do good with them because they're gifts. Our talents are gifts. So Jessica, that is a nutshell. Did I summarize it well? Because I'm not sure if I may have lost my train of thought. Did it make sense, Jessica, now?
So I guess like you said, like the middle ground, right? Like that's the best place to be at, as opposed to, somebody who's too cocky or self-confident, and then somebody who's so humble that they don't necessarily like, I guess, express their like gifts.
Right. And Jessica, let me ask you a question. Were you here when we asked you to make a list of the talents you have and a list of things that you need to improve in? Were you here when we did that?
I think I came in at the very end. I wasn't sure what y'all were doing.
So basically, usually if you ask someone to do that, what's 5 things you're really good at? What's 5 things you need to improve on? The list of 5 things I need to improve on comes very, very quick. It's like, no big deal. Like, I got this. Because it's sometimes easier to see the things that we need to improve on. And yet it's just as important as it is to know the areas we can grow. That's how important it is to know the strengths that we have. They're both important, and we have to try to balance somewhere in between. Jackie, you wrote something. I can't read it. Can you say it on the mic? First of all, Jackie, what year did you graduate? It's a mix of people here from different years, so we can hear you. Hold on, I'm going to unmute you.
Oh, hey. By the way, question. Is Laser Eichenblatt related to like Sarah Eichenblatt in Jerusalem? Same Eichenblatt? Different.
Laser Eichenblatt. Are you married to Sarah Eichenblatt? Yes, he is. But
okay.
He was here for the year of Shlichut until the Shlichut, till everything changed. The world is changing. It's still changing.
Changing world. Cool. That's really cool. My only comment that I was making was that I think that there's a bigger message to it as well. I could be making this up. It's possible. Which is that while we recognize our own humility or our own strengths, why not? I think you have 2 characters that are interacting with one another. So it's not really about recognizing just your own strengths, but also others, and that there's a space between Moshe and Aaron where one is very supportive of the other, and there's no way that either could have built each other up without the support of one another. It's just physically not possible.
Right.
And so I think humility is also a very big piece of recognizing what you don't have that others might have, and knowing what your strengths are and where other people make up for those.
I think that's a really good point. And I may have mentioned it briefly. You think you did a very nice job, like looping it together in a very clear way, because at the end of the day, part of the Sikha was actually literally talking about that as important as it is to see yourself that way. If you see yourself as having this indelible Aleph with talents, gifts, abilities in a balance and with humility, you have to see others that way too. Because it doesn't make sense that God just created you that way, but everyone else not. So I think that that's a really, really, there's basically there's three very practical takeaways from one very simple word in the Parsha, from one very simple mini aleph.
I have a question.
And
Jessica
yeah, go for it.
kind of touched on it, which is that we're going with this medium text, right? Like the middle ground, the little baby bears, like middle of the mom and dad equals good mush. Okay. And
which math, the bed is too hard, the bed is too small, Goldilocks, are we on that
that's right, you know. So why wouldn't we go with, like, here's the thing is, if we're playing that there's some sort of middle text that exists, which is a combination of, I don't, ego meets humility, sure, why not? Why wouldn't we go with and people tend to see what's missing as opposed to there, right? Like the missing tile syndrome. Then why wouldn't we, Mons? Why wouldn't we make the decision to have big text the whole time with a couple of small letters throughout, right? Acknowledging that we as individuals don't tend to see our greatness, while also recognizing that we need to also occasionally look at our humility, or the reverse, where it's very small.
I think actually the answer is in the Hayom Yom, that either direction is unhealthy. Either extreme, thinking too little of yourself is unhealthy, thinking too much of yourself is unhealthy. Either extreme is unhealthy. And I think really the answer lies in the Hayom Yom of today, which, I mean, I'm not doing it justice by like chopping it up this way, but really, honestly, can I be honest? Literally Google Hayom Yom of today. And I think the answer literally lies within it, because it's saying, meaning the desire to be overly stringent with oneself and find faults or sin not in accordance with the truth. That makes fun. You don't realize it. Or the opposite, meaning either extreme is not healthy. Extremes, that's where balance comes in. That's where this text is teaching us to see both perspectives. There's something to be learned from Adam, knowing that he came from God, that it kapav shaladav. He knew his talents. He knew his abilities. You should know it. But sometimes being so full of knowledge of your talents and abilities and knowing that you're divine and precious and smart and wonderful can lead us into an unhealthy space. And on the other hand, extreme humility is not. So obviously, first of all, by the way, strategically, if the Torah was written in big font, it would be a lot heavier. Okay, I'm saying, I think the Rebbe was pointing out that at the end of the day, it's the yotzeh min haklal that we learn from. If something's a klal, if something's always this way, why is it now that as a world, if you ask people in the world what's important, they would say health and family? Yeah, they would say it. They wouldn't say money, and money's important. They wouldn't say vacations. Vacations are important. Why is it now that we're so freaked out about homes and families and being locked in? Because it's yotzeh min haklal. Does it mean it's not an important klal? It's an important klal. If you ever ask people I usually ask people, what is top 3 things that are important to you? How often do you spend engaging in those 3 things? So let's say, and a lot of times the things that we think are really important to us are not really where we spend our time. So something else is going on here in this world right now that we're getting back to baseline, but it's uncomfortable. I mean, it's uncomfortable because people are dying. It's uncomfortable because we're worried, will we have eggs? It's uncomfortable because the world is, will there be money? It's uncomfortable because last night in my women's class, one of the moms got on and said, my husband just shut his business down and I'm out of work. She's a teacher. He's in a jewelry business. That's it. I don't know. We have a few months of money in the bank. That's it. So we're living in crazy times, but would anyone ever say that health and family were not important? Okay, maybe the people still in spring break on Miami. By the way, that really messes up with my faith in humanity.
That's a whole other conversation.
I'm joking, obviously, but you understand what I'm saying? Balance.
The flights are cheap, so we're going to Miami.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go with that.
Crazy.
Any questions or thoughts on this, Talia or Beth? Any thoughts or questions on this? If not, we'll wrap it up and call it a day.
I'll just say that it's definitely like a good reminder during this time when we're trying to like navigate time with our families and navigate how to, live together. It's important to be able to remember like all these things about the balance between humility and ego, and the balance between like knowing your strengths and knowing where you could work on, and being able to see that in others is, I think, a good reminder for when we're trying to like get along with our family and see how each one of us kind of fits
contributes. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. I had a workshop by a psychologist last week, and he said after in China, as they settle down from this whole quarantine stuff, the divorce rate went up by 30%.
Wow.
30%. It's going to challenge everything. But you know what? This is a really good practical takeaway. So let's remember, give tzedakah. Let's remember whatever prayers we can do, little coins each day. And let's remember to reach out. And this is Talia, you told me this, and I put it on Instagram, put it on social media. I'll keep doing it. Reach out to 5 people you haven't heard from just to check in on them. This is a very scary time for a lot of people.
And it really makes a difference. I've already reached out to a couple extra people that I think of. Like,
wait, when you were calling me, were you calling her to check on me? Reach out? That's so cute. I thought you were coming to say hi. I was on your list.
No, but like every so often, like I'll come across like friends like Instagram page or Insta story or whatever, and I'll see like a friend of mine who posts something random or whatever that I haven't reached out to yet, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like it would be so nice to talk to her again. So I'll give her a call. And like the other day I called a couple friends of people who posted their stories on Instagram, and it was like, it meant a lot. They weren't necessarily, thank God, like the most depressed of people I've spoken to, but it definitely makes a difference when you call because everyone else is in the same situation you are.
Yep. Gotta get off. Yeah, we're all getting off. We're going to keep these actually to a half hour. So I just want to say that I started off with Yessi's grandmother is in the hospital, 99. She has COVID, and they sent, they let one aunt in with a phone to say goodbye to all her grandchildren. We just had a very large video call, and obviously I'm doing this in her merit. She's still in this world. And I'm doing this in merit of Gota Bas Hanyachasha. It should be, we should see healing for everyone, and we should hear good news. L'chaim, lovely ladies. We'll see you next week. Bring your own pizza next week. Bye.
Bye.